Hi, everybody. I'm Ron Williams. I wrote the book Rise and Shine Anxiety, Depression, Life Management Tools, written over 7 years and 4 months. No kidding. Very, very powerful book. Very, very effective with book in hand. That's what I've seen. I'll get into that stuff in a little bit here. But the book, if you haven't seen it before, here it is. It's in a final cut as it shows on this line down here, fourth edition. The substance of this book is why this is so powerful. What it does, it is really, in a nutshell, it's everything we can do for ourselves on this planet as a human being, naturally and permanently. So it really applies to every human being out there, whether we suffer or average or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Average being, emotionally average, but you got a lot of negativity that might haunt you sometimes. Very negative world we live in. Right? Very, very powerful what I see. And why it's so powerful, it bridges everything we can do for our minds, bodies, and spirit. That's what we have to collectively pull together well. And if we do it really well, it's amazing the impacts it can have on us. For me, completely life changing. I can't get any better as a human being. I had anxiety, depression, OCD for 25 years, worst case. Nothing worse. My son, bipolar type 2 medication for life. And before that, he was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. He is doing beautifully without the meds. Powerful stuff. Of course, we can't put a review in for that, but for the others, best thing to do is go to my Amazon site for my book. Okay, and if you get there by going to Amazon.com and doing a search for Rise and Shine Anxiety, and the book comes up. And when you go there, hit read more for the overview, and that gets that, and go to the last paragraph. And there I share a blog post that I generated. Took some time on that. It's really good. And it gets into the substance and effectiveness I've seen with book in hand only. And the impacts on people, 100% of those that are willing to read and work on themselves with this book diligently, the impacts were not good, enormous, huge, life-changing was one review. That's a 3/320 reviewer. This book literally saved my life. That was another one. That was a 9/115 reviewer. Other ones are very good, but the ones that really worked on it, those are the ones I really knew. And the impacts, again, it shouldn't have surprised me, but my gosh, when I saw the impacts on these people, it was just a beautiful thing. Good God. And I thought it would become this way, become that strong, and it has. So if you take a look at the reviews, or if you look at that blog post, I go over the people that are involved here. The 9/115 reviewer was probably the most spiritual young lady I've ever met at that age, of like early 20s, ever. All right. But she had a lot of anxiety, depression going on for understandable reasons. Bad stuff going on in the family. She got the book. 2.5 months later, she was a different person. The impacts were enormous. The way she was carrying herself, eye to eye contact, and the assertive nature which she reflected on people she had to be assertive with in her life, within her family, powerful. Yes. Awesome. Go look at that 9/115 review. The other one, the 3/320 reviewer, that's another one. That's probably the most glaring one. And he was pretty spiritual too. Okay, he was more spiritual than I was, but again, I was going to church, hoping, praying, all this stuff would get out of me, but I needed more. And by the way, what that positivity stuff does, it allows us to crack open that negative shell that can surround us for years. And for me, it buried me for a year, for 25 years. It was a horrible experience. Anxiety, depression, teeing off left and right. Nothing worse. All right. So he was with professionals for about 7, 8 years, and when I saw him, he just got kind of. He told me he kind of got out of his psych ward not too long before that. All right. So he got my book, the freebie I was giving out during the holidays. And he went back home and thought, well, I'm not a PhD, and he might as well stick with a PhD for whatever. That's how he felt at the time. Well, he hit another low point, and then he contacted me. And I told him, frankly speaking, if I was a PhD in the mental health community, I could not tell you the God's honest truth of what it takes. And he was taking multiple medications. No good. So he got the book, and he was diligent about it. And I told him, within 6 weeks, you'll feel like a a lot of changes coming on, and that's exactly what happened to him. Okay, his review is life changing. Go read it. Okay. What I want to get to though is this is my last adventure is a self-help guide, a freebie by the way. Email me at ronnielg123 at gmail.com. I get you a free parent self-help guide for the youngins. Why I did this is because I heard of a 12-year-old that was struggling terribly or terribly struggling with depression. Okay, and I knew of this young lady, and my wheels started turning. Okay, and I asked God actually that night, could I help a young one deal with this pain or whatever? And the next morning, I already knew what it took. I had the answers. Because this book is all we can do for ourselves on the planet as a human being. So absolutely it applies to a young one. But I knew I would have to make adjustments in guiding the young ones because they can't read and work on themselves unless they get much or older maybe. Very, very powerful stuff. Okay. Uh, it took me 2 months to put it together. 2 months. And it came out really solid. I'm incredibly pleased by it. It's strong, very strong. What it contains there's two different sections, and one has to do with is adjustments to our environment or the household that we can make as a parent or a parent to be, what we can bring in there to improve the upbringing of the young one. And the number one thing I mentioned. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot to mention. I think that the positivity tools that are in this book are tremendous. Who I learned from was a major sufferer like me and a professional she could trust. It took them 16 years how best to do that as a human being. I had a key sufferer of depression, and the other part of the book is our faith, our foundation. Very powerful. Collectively, between that and exercise and eating well, we got everything we need in life. But yeah, so I say the first thing that I mentioned about adjustments is bring in faith formation to the young ones. That is at least half the game in our lives, actually, by the way. I went through too much not to know this. Okay, very powerful. And by the way, that our foundation is a basis of our positivity when we do it right. When we do it wrong, it's a basis of our negativity, flat out, no question about it. So that is very powerful stuff. And then the next thing I say about adjustments is if you are struggling as a parent or a parent to be, I urge you to work on yourself. And the book that we talked about there is huge. Again, this is the answer. I know it is. It's got to be. I can't get any better as a human being. And I was as bad can get. I mean, if you are willing to work on yourself, you will get out of this stuff to a great extent. Anxiety, depression, PTSD, OCD, addiction recovery, ADD, ADHD, BPD, I am sure. Bipolar type 2, as in the case of my son, absolutely. Bipolar 1, well, this could only help because, again, all we can do for ourselves on the planet, huge. Okay. So that I urge you to do that because I went through excruciating pains. Living 21 years with a lot of pains. First for 12 years, like all the time, constantly, and the next 10 years because I made mistakes on and off. But it was excruciating. Going to school functions or birthdays or whatever I did, it was so painful. All the beautiful moments it should have been through every step of the way did not feel that way because of the pain I went through. So I urge you to work on yourself. What I mentioned also is tidbit flow downs, a real life tidbit flow downs to the young ones. Because what we've been doing through the past couple generations is we've been spoiling our kids. Does it bode very well when they go on their own and leave mom and dad's? No, absolutely not. We got to improve on that. So it's a matter of treating you good, of course, but not going too far with that, okay? And giving them reality checks along the way. And where I got these tidbits are from the book, the program that I learned from. Okay, very powerful stuff like life is not fair, but life is good. Reality checks along the way. Again, I mentioned about that. The only definition of failure is not trying. So if you try your very best, you cannot fail. Tidbits as they mature or whatever. It depends on their mental maturity and all that stuff. But parents, you should be able to figure that stuff out, when to do that best. Happy. That's not real. Okay, that's not everyday living. shoot for peacefulness. Anyway, it's loaded with those tidbits. Now, the other part of this guide is if they are struggling. Okay, and the key thing is what I do is I point to the main book for that information. Section 3, I point to about nutrition, eating well, and stuff like that. Cutting back on the sugars and the caffeine, getting down to our core level, so it allows us to reprogram ourselves better. And the reprogramming has to do with repetitive training of stuff we need to learn, and that flat out works. Whether we do faith formation, or whether we do the positivity tools that I told you about from the lady, it's been proven. It flat out works. And for the book, what I've seen with book in hand, it flat out works. No question. You just have to be willing to do that. All right. That's really very, very powerful stuff there. And so uh, now as far as that is concerned what we need to do there is we point to section the key sections are section 5 and 6. Sorry about that. Section 5 has to do with conditioning the sufferer or the young one to go through like a breathing muscle tension relaxation techniques via a media that I request you to get to avoid any confusion. It used to be a YouTube link, but no more. It's no longer available. So get that. It's so important to start off on the right foot because you'll be doing that 3 times a day up to. Okay. Then it gets down to panic. If you're dealing with panic, what to do best for that. And then whittling down to our individual negative thoughts that are bothering us and changing that from negativity to positivity. Very powerful tools and skills. Okay, that is the root cause of our issues, by the way. Besides, going into section 6, the sources of our negativity. Yes, that's part of the game of getting to the root cause of our issues. That's what we shoot for. We don't go after the symptom, we go at the root cause. All right, powerful stuff. The adjustments that I made is again, the young one won't be able to read and work on themselves completely or not at all. Who knows, depending on their mental maturity. Okay, so the parent will have to do that. Now, who's a guide? Best guide is a parent or a chosen mentor that knows the child. Who would be more caring than the parent than them to take care of their young one? And who would try harder than them to take care of the young ones? Okay, if they're struggling, especially, my gosh, the parent would. Huge. So that's really important to address to you. Okay. So as far as the writing and writing, the reading is, you do the reading yourself mainly, maybe, or not as much. Or depends on what the youngin can do on their own, which is important to find out. And then you move along, and the writing skills. You'd be doing it on behalf of the young one as you communicate with each other. Okay, and then in the journaling one that's where I change the scope of that to aiming toward the main one of changing negativity positivity. So the book explains really well there. Okay, that's as far as the other changes that I made is the iteration steps, going through the repetitive training steps, how many times for each subsection that are important here. And what I did for section 5, since it's less efficient to guide somebody versus them doing the work themselves, I bumped it up from like 4 times through to 6 times through. Okay, for key sections, and that's what I did with that. And in section 6, I actually reduced the amount of those stuff through initially for them because there hasn't been serious patterns by the child typically or youngin typically that got them into a groove of why they're suffering. So you go through that, and if you go through that and you find out that there are prominent sources of negativity, then you deal with that with more steps compatible with what we have in section 5. Anyway, I don't want to go past my time limit or they'll cancel me here, or I won't be able to put this up. So you take care, God bless, and have a good day. Bye.